What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, aka Unique Mazik. I'm the hardest working man in sports and gaming, and this is my MLB The Show World Series roster, all-time World Series roster. I'm setting up the tournament. This is the second episode of this series. I wanted to go through a little bit of it. Told you I would reveal each division at a time, so we'll be showing which teams are being represented for every franchise in the major leagues. And this first video, as you can already tell, is focusing on the National League West. So you see the usage of the filters. This is not just for this particular video. When we start actually simulating the games, when a team that played during the black and white era from a TV presentation standpoint is at home, the games will be simulated in black and white. So you'll see it like this is let's call it their home field advantage. Doesn't really mean anything, but it sure looks real good. Don't this look good? Leave it in the comments and like this video if you really are digging the black and white filter. Obviously, if a team is at home that is from the 80s, 90s, even the 70s, later 60s even, they will not be in black and white. But just to give you that feel, look, we're in the Polo Grounds, and Willie Mays just went opposite field on Randy Johnson. Randy Johnson's in a time warp. Randy Johnson's in a time machine. Whatever. It's in black and white, so you can see it. Some of these other ones are from with the Colorado Rockies team in at home. So obviously there won't be in black and white, but that's it. So now, without further ado, I'm going to go in and start to go over these rosters for every single team in the National League West. Look at Sandy Koufax, Matt Holliday. So I'm already giving you some clues as to which teams. You can probably guess, if you are hardcore fans of these teams, which ones I'm using. But let's let Tony Gwynn go deep, and then we're going to jump right into this. So as I mentioned, these rosters will only be the 25-man major league roster. And for, just at the end of the rosters, I had to make a little bit of some cuts here and there just to kind of make sure, because it's really 26-man rosters here on the show. And there's one guy here or there to elect whether or not you go with a hitter or a pitcher, which way you went. But for the most part, almost everything is exactly the way it should be, from the type of roster that would say who are the 26 best guys from this particular team to give this squad a chance to win. So we're going to start off with the Diamondbacks. And for them, I kind of use their batting order, although I switched some stuff around because things change and baseball changes, and so does MLB The Show. So I kind of gave them what I thought would be the best batting order for them to have. So you got Tony Womack here. He's a 75 overall. Jay Bell, he does with the glasses in the at the plate. And then you got Louis Gonzalez, who was already in the game as a legend. One of the greatest seasons that any single player has had. Just the 57 home runs that he hit this year was just from another planet. Matt Williams, who got hurt early, came back a little bit later in the season, kind of hurt their lineup a little bit, but Matt Williams is here. We got Mark Grace, one of my all-time favorite Cubs. Kind of hate that he more identifies with the Diamondbacks, but he does. Reggie Sanders had a really good season this year. So this is Reggie Sanders. Steve Finley, Steve Finley is on 3 different teams here in the National League West. So that's going to tell you right there a little bit of something about Steve Finley. I didn't get a chance to get this authentic Steve Finley on every version. This is the one that's in the game. So I put him with the Diamondbacks, and this is actually the best version of him of the 3 that I have, and he's an 82 overall. Damian Miller played some good defense and was a solid catcher, got the 81 overall. And then we got Danny Bautista is the DH against the right-handed pitcher when you're going with the DH lineup. Here looking at the bench, we got Craig Counsell, Dave DeLucci, we got Junior Spivey. Junior Spivey had a lot of clutch hits for these Diamondbacks. So if you're a Diamondbacks fan, he was killer in the clutch. He also murdered left-handed pitching. So that's why you see those ratings where you are with the contact for him. Rod Barajas, and then you got Arubio Durazo. I always thought Arubio Durazo looked like this guy that was supposed to be a monster, but just it never seemed to work out. It does have the 80 power rating here, but still only a 62 overall. So if we look at their right-handed pitching lineup with no DH, it's pretty much the same. I didn't do a lot of changing around here. I've given you already a little bit of a preview of who's going to be the #1 starter for the rotation. As you see, the big unit. I love that render, the big unit too. So this is pretty much the same. Let's look at the left-handers against the DH. Craig Counsell was fantastic against left-handers. So his batting average, if you look at his batting average for that year, it's super high against left-handed pitching. So he starts, even though he's a left-handed hitter, against lefties. Junior Spivey, as I mentioned, he did a job on left-handed hitters. Gonzalez, he's left-handed, but it don't matter. Not that season, it didn't matter. Reggie Sanders, Matt Williams. We got Mark Grace, who could hit anybody. Steve Finley, who is not great against left-handed pitching. He got really bad later in his career. This is one of his best seasons against left-handed pitching. So he is further down in the lineup against lefties. And then you got Damian Miller and Jay Bell, right? So with no DH, pretty much the same. You just lose. Jay Bell goes to shortstop, and Junior Spivey, I believe it is the one who goes to the bench. So let's take a look at that starting rotation. All right, as I mentioned to you, Randy Johnson had his eyes closed for a second. He was asleep. Randy had to wake Randy up. He is the #1 starter with the 99 overall. He just had a crazy year that year. Kurt Schilling had a year that was almost on that same level. So he is the #2 guy. Depth in starting pitching, it might be this team's issue, because you kind of had to look around and find who really was the third starter. It's Albie Lopez. He had a pretty strong year. ERA was solid that year, so I made him the third starter. But once it gets to 4 and 5, it gets really thin. Bobby Witt struggled mightily to throw strikes, but he did have, decent hits per 9 innings allowed there, so he got a little bit of a break there. And Bobby Witt had a decent arm, so even though he was older at this point, so he ended up being the 4th starter. And then we got Miguel Bautista as the 5th starter. I don't know if in our World Series tournament how often we'll be seeing a 5th starter for these guys, but if they're facing elimination, then probably Miguel Bautista will be in the bullpen. Robert Ellis struggled that year, but he's on the team. Brian Anderson, the same. Mike Morgan was 41 years old. They got him late. He's like the 26th man that I added to the roster for them. Troy Brohan, he struggled. Greg Swindell. I looked at the ages for this Diamondbacks team. This was an old team, like just in general, across the board. I think they might have had like their youngest guy was like 29. It was crazy. Brett Prinz, and then you had Byung-Young Kim, who had a really good year as the closer. So that is the 2001 Diamondbacks, that first team in for my World Series roster. Next up, we got the 07 Colorado Rockies. If you're a Rockies fan, you probably knew it was going to be this team. Willie Tavares, Speedy Willie, leads it off. We got Kazuo Matsui. I did my best to make Matsui. The show makes it really difficult to make Asian players. Just overall, they don't allow you to do enough with the facial features to really have it come through. So unless it's something that I'm messing up, I have to look at some of these guys who made some of the other Asian players across the history of the game, and they've made them far more accurate maybe than I have. Might just be a skill issue on my part. And we got Matt Holliday had a killer season this year, just killer. Todd Helton hadn't actually really become Todd Helton yet, but he still hit for a stupid average. The power hadn't really kicked in. I think he only hit 16 home runs that year, but it's still a fantastic hitter that year as well. Garrett Atkins, this team could pop. I'm talking about just up and down the lineup, just guys with stupid pop. This was young rookie Troy Tulowitzki. Then we got Brad Haupt. And Corey Sullivan is the DH against right-handed pitchers. And then we got Yorvit Torrealba. Might be the only part of the lineup that feels like, okay, yeah, you can get away with Yorvit Torrealba. Then we got Ryan Spielborz coming off the bench. Ian Stewart, Jeff Baker, Chris Iannetta. Here's Steve Finley. Again, he's everywhere, guys. He's everywhere. And then Jamie Carroll. So that is the lineup for the right-handed pitchers with a DH. Without a DH, pretty much stays the same. Corey Sullivan goes to the bench, and that's just about it. All right, left-handed pitching. Willie Tavares, Kaz Matsui, Todd Helton moves to the third, hitting third, and lets Holiday go into the fourth spot. Garrett Atkins, Troy Tulowitzki, Brad Haupt, Ryan Spielborgs becomes the DH here, and then your Torrealba is still hitting ninth. Everything stays the same here except when you go to no DH, except for your Torrealba obviously moves up into eighth spot from the ninth spot. Let's look at our next team. Or actually, no, let's look at our rotation for the Rockies. Now, pitching is not this team's strong suit. They had a decent ace up at the top with Jeff Francis. Ubaldo Jimenez, number 2 here. Aaron Cook, number 3, gets really shaky from there. Jason Hurst struggled most of the season with consistency, and so did Josh Fogg. So, yeah, from our World Series tournament, they might be going with a 3-man rotation, and even then, it might get a little shaky. In the bullpen, they got Rodrigo Lopez, LaTroy Hawkins. We got Jorge Julio. We got Jeremy Affeldt. We got Manny Corpus, and we got Brian Fuentes as the closer. So that's it for the 07 Rockies. Let's look at our next team. All right, now some of y'all are going to be mad because I went probably way before you were born, even before I was born. But I wanted to get the best team in the team's history. And when I looked at the Dodgers World Series champions, this 1965 Dodgers team is what stood out to me from how they ran through the season. You know, not necessarily going up and down, looking at their lineup and go, ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm talking about how they handled the season. This team was killer, man. And I had to put them here. And you're going to see once we get to the pitching staff why they're here. From a hitting standpoint, they are going to struggle to score runs. At the top, they have a quintessential leadoff man in Maury Wills. Stole over 100 bases, stole 91 this particular season. So he's batting first. Then we got Jim Gilliam, 2 switch hitters right there at the top. Ron Fairley had a decent year. Lou Johnson is their power guy. Like, they don't have a lot of power threats at all throughout this lineup. He is their guy. Willie Davis is here. We got Wes Parker. He's the DH. Jim Lefebvre became a manager. He actually won Rookie of the Year for the Dodgers. Dodgers seem like they just manufacture Rookie of the Years. But Jim Lefebvre won Rookie of the Year with the Dodgers. Then he became the Chicago Cubs manager years later. John Roseborough. Now, he was one of the really good defensive catchers in the 60s. And so the rating that you see for him is more about his arm and his reactions behind the plate. Just a marginal hitter, decent, not great, but the 81 overall is because of his defense. And then things get really sketchy here in right field with Tommy Davis. So we got the Davis brothers. They're not actually brothers. Well, I don't think they were the brothers. But we got them, but it's, yeah, that ninth spot's going to be really tough when they have a DH. They also, we have Wally Moon, the man, this is the original unibrow, y'all. Wally Moon's eyebrows, like, touched the other side of his head from the middle. They are very, and he wasn't trying to hide it at all. I'm talking about, it looked like 2 centipedes mating in the middle of his head. Like, it was really something. But, yes, he's on the team. John Kennedy, Al Ferrara, Dick Tracewski. We got Jeff Torborg, who became a manager of the Chicago White Sox later. He also caught Sandy Koufax's perfect game. So, not that great, though. Only a 67. And then we got Don LeJohn. Don LeJohn. Yes, it is Don LeJohn. Now, let's look at the right-handed with no DH. Pretty much stays about the same. Let's look at the left-handed lineup. Lefebvre moves up to number 2. We got Fairley, Johnson, Gilliam, Davis, Parker, Torborg, and then Al Ferrara moves in, and he's a 43 overall, guys, at DH. He really shouldn't be there, guys. Now, I'm gonna make an executive decision right quick and take him out of here, and we're gonna put anybody else but him. Looks like it's gonna be Tommy Davis. But we really didn't want to do that because I believe Tommy Davis is just dreadful against left-handers. Can't be worse than Alfarara, though. I mean, no, Alfarara was 50. Yeah. See, this is why I had Alfarara there, because he's actually not horrible. Well, he is horrible. He's not as horrible as everybody else against left-handers. So we'll keep him there. It's bad. Just no. This is not a great hitting team. But let's look at that pitching staff, though. At the top, arguably the greatest left-handed pitcher in the history of the game. You get some arguments from Randy Johnson people and Steve Carlton people and a couple others. But Sandy Koufax in his prime, which was a short prime because he retired so early, retired after a Cy Young season. Just think about it. And, I mean, just for a 5 or 6 year stretch, just dominant. And this was one of his best seasons. And, yeah, he totally earns the 99 overall. Just stupid good. Just stupid good. All of the numbers are just crazy. And right behind him is a guy who would have been probably the number 1 starting pitcher on every other team except for this one, Don Drysdale. And he comes in with the 96 overall. Then at third is a dude who had a fantastic season himself, Claude Osteen. Then we got Johnny Padres become a pitching coach later on down the line. And then they do have a little bit of a weak 5th starter in Nick Wilhite, but you also got Bob Miller in the bullpen, Howie Reed, John Purden. He should never get the ball. Ron Perinoski was like more like the closer, actually. Mike Kekich, and then Jim Brewer is here. But this top 3, even though it's left-hand dominant, their whole rotation is pretty left-hand dominant. But, oh boy, it could get really filthy if you're playing the Dodgers. So this is the 1965 Dodgers. It's time for the Padres. 1998 Padres, you guys probably knew that. Quilvio Veras, Speedy, at the top of the lineup. Then we had an older Tony Gwynn, but still slapping covers off balls. He got the 88 overall. We got Ken Caminiti, rest in peace. Rest in peace for Tony Gwynn as well. Ken Caminiti was a power threat for real. He was 35 years old by this time. He had already had like his best seasons, but he was still a threat. This was a 50 home run season for Greg Vaughn, and he was cranking them. And a lot of people may not realize, I believe Greg Vaughn, I think if I don't have the stats right here in front of me right this second, but he stole 12 bases that year. He moved pretty well. He struck out a lot, so that's an issue. But the power was legit, right? Wally Joyner had a really, really good season. If you look at like his clutch numbers, which is what I based the clutch hitting rating on, which is what they call it late and close, and then with 2 outs and runners in scoring position, off the charts. You don't want to face Wally Joyner in 1998 in those situations because he was killer. And it's just a good season overall. Jim Leyritz gets the DH job here, and here is Steve Finley again. He's everywhere. I told you he was there 3 times. Andy Sheets gets to start at shortstop against right-handed pitchers, and then Greg Myers is at catcher. We got Archie Cianfrocco on the bench, Ruben Rivera, Carlos Hernandez, Chris Gomez, Ed Giovanola. I actually do not remember him. I really don't. Very few of these guys of any of this in the last 30 years is there a name that I just flat don't remember. I flat do not remember Ed Giovanola. I don't. Mark Sweeney, yeah, he probably shouldn't be playing a lot. But really, Archie Cianfrocco, I really don't know what is happening with that. But yeah, I rated him the way his stats were for that year. I believe he hit like 181. I think he hit like literally, I think he had 9 at-bats against left-handers and never got a hit. It was bad. It was really bad. So, it wasn't. So I didn't deal him a blow. I dealt him the truth. So let's look at, with no DH is pretty much the same. But left-handers, Veras still leads off. Tony Gwynn, Caminiti, Vaughn. Leyritz moves up to 5th. Wally Joyner moves down to 6th. Chris Gomez is in for Sheets. And Carlos Hernandez is in for Greg Myers. Even though they're both left-handed, Hernandez was a little bit better against lefties. And Ruben Rivera was better against lefties than Steve Finley, who struggled super mightily. I mean, Ruben Rivera wasn't great against them either. But we went with the lefty-righty thing. But as a matter of fact, you look at this, I don't know, maybe it's about the same. So you go with the lefty-righty matchup when it's about the same, which is why I'm actually forgetting why I put these guys here. But as I look at it, it's kind of logical. But this is the 1998 San Diego Padres lineup. Let's look at their rotation, which was actually really good. Guys, I kept double checking the numbers on these, like just to make sure that the little formulas and stuff that I was using for rating pitchers was right. And I kept coming. I'm like, man, this just is what it is. I know how dominant Kevin Brown was. Kevin Brown was super in the 90s. That sinker ball, I mean, he was nasty. He was super nasty. So the 98, I know he had a fantastic year. Andy Ashby was also a quality pitcher. Then we got down to Joey Hamilton. Joey Hamilton was a weird case because he had a kind of a high ERA, but when you look at his hits per 9 innings, that was relatively low. His biggest issue was the walks. So he was great at not allowing the long ball, went over 200 innings, had good velocity. So, you know, the way the rating shook out, even though he did struggle to find I think he walked 4 guys per 9 innings, which, yeah, is kind of high. Even though he struggled with control, I couldn't break my system because it felt like he should have been more than like a 79. So I stuck with my numbers and he got the 84. Sterling Hitchcock also checked in with the 80 because he gave up too many home runs per 9. So that was kind of where his issue came in. And just hits per 9 overall, but his control was better. Strikeouts were decently high. So he comes in with the 80. And then Mark Langston, he should not have been still playing because it was tough. It's a tough season for Mark Langston. He had some good years back in the day with the Mariners and the Angels, but this was with the Padres and it wasn't one of them. They were trying to find a 5th starter and they went with him a lot. Probably shouldn't have. Brian Bowringer, we got Donnie Wall, who had a really good season, struggled a little bit with control, but the strikeouts and limiting the home runs, he was on it, and limiting hits, period. He was very, very good out of the bullpen for them that year. Scott Sanders, we got Dan Maselli, who was pretty strong out of the bullpen, Carlos Reyes, and then we got Trevor Hoffman. He was older by this time, but still a dominant closer. So this is the 98 San Diego Padres. So you thought we went back with the Dodgers team. I had to really go back for this Giants team. 1954. You gotta say it like that when you're going way back. 54. I know. Don't be mad. Don't be mad, guys. Now with this particular lineup, I stuck with what the more common batting orders were, and it was crazy that Willie Mays was hit 6th more times. That's this year. Now, he was only 23 years old and was just really coming into being a superstar. But it's amazing to me that he hit 6th. I don't know if we'll stick with that. But they had a good enough lineup where he could probably get away with it. Got Whitey Lockman leading it off. Al Dark batting 2nd. Hank Thompson was a big-time power threat for them. Monty Irvin is a Hall of Famer who was later in his career but still very effective. Don Miller, he was, I think he is the father of the Miller that played for the Cubs in the early 2000s. I'm almost positive he is. Willie Mays, one of the greatest players that ever lived, 99 overall. This is his first really, oh my God, season. Dusty Rhodes, let me tell you something, Daddy. They get funky like a monkey back here with the San Francisco Giants. Come out here and swing my bat and give her a back elbow on somebody. Funky like a monkey. Not that Dusty Rhodes, but I cannot say Dusty Rhodes without start talking a little funky like a monkey. Look here, let me tell you something, Daddy. Ric Flair! I'm sorry. Anyway, he had a very good year. Designated hitter, Davey Williams, and then we got Wes Westrom. On the bench, they got Ebba St. Clair, Billy Gardner, Bobby Hoffman, Ray Catt, Bill Taylor. Sorry he's on the team, guys, but it's a 26-man roster. And Foster Castleman, same goes for him as well. All right, let's look here at the left-handed lineup. Everything's mostly the same. Switched a couple things around. Dusty Rhodes is going to be out there either way, but Ebba St. Clair steps on in here for Wes Westrom, and that's really the only thing. So let's look at the rotation, which is more top-heavy than anything. Johnny Antonelli. Very interesting story with Johnny Antonelli. Fantastic talent. All talent evaluators at that time pretty much just talked up on this guy, but he was a lot like JD Drew. And if you know anything about the JD Drew story, you know he came into the league as one of the most hated players because he got this label as being like this money hungry guy and a prima donna. And Johnny Antonelli went through a very similar thing early in his career. It was very difficult for him to shake it. But this particular year in 1954, Giants fans loved him because he was the ace of a World Series winning team, but he did kind of carry that stigma throughout his career. The secondary pitcher was Sal Magley, which is a really interesting guy. He was a latecomer to baseball, period. Had a good arm, didn't have a long career at all, but was able to play a huge part in the Giants winning the World Series. This is the New York Giants, by the way. Ruben Gomez had a really strong year this year. Just a solid pitcher. They had a really solid top three guys. Then you had Don Little. Jim Hearn was the other starting pitcher. We got Al Corwin, Larry Jansen, Al Worthington. They call him Big Red. He threw hard, but he had a really hard time finding the strike zone. I'm telling you, the walks per nine for him was very scary. Marv Grissom was actually more kind of like a closer, but not as. I think he led them in saves that year, but as far as who had the best stuff to be a closer, we had to go with my man Hoyt Wilhelm. But we also had Wendy McCall, who also could run it up there to the line. I almost said to the line of scrimmage. He could also run it up to the plate in a hurry as well. So that is the bullpen, and this is the team for the 54 Giants. The 1954 Giants. So that's all I have for you today. We are going to go into our next division. This one took a little bit longer than I thought. I think the next division will probably go a little bit quicker than this. Going to be doing National League East. So kind of start thinking about which teams you think will make it. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe as well. Put some of your comments, your feedback about what you think about this project. It's coming together. Like I said, I knew it would take a little bit of time, some additional episodes to kind of churn it all out. I was actually thinking about maybe doing the entire simulation in one video and just kind of really cutting it up to show the highlights and just kind of going through after we do the team reveals. Let me know in the comment section what you think about that concept as well. But I appreciate you watching as always. God bless and peace.